Yes, I can hear you. Yes, I can.
Yeah. So yeah, I just have to commend that. Yeah, you've done a great job so far. Okay, so we just have 2 more minutes. The sessions are recorded, so we start on the dot, and then because we have two classes, 800 and 803, so we start on the dot. So, but just before we start, so we know we're supposed to look at chapter one, two, and three of the textbook. And then, of course, I expect that everyone who is in 800 is also in 803. So I sent a new PDF for 803. So please kindly disregard the first PDF. It's actually it's relevant, but it's just I think it's this version is this is version this fifth edition rather. So I think the one that was sent to 803 was second edition, right? So but it's the same textbook. But you notice that the new textbook that I've shared is actually what relates to what we are doing or what we should do in 803, which is the security policies and implementation issues. Yeah, so that's that about it. So um okay, before we start, just 1 minute. Let me just say my camera will not be um available for this Google Meet because I'm actually recording with OBS Studio, and because we know this is going to be uploaded on YouTube, right? So OBS is using my camera, so I'm making my camera available for OBS, right? So that those who would watch it, would be able to see my face or see the instructor, right? So this might not be the case when we have other instructors who are you know they want to take the class because they will be using their own system's camera. But just for this case, it's my own camera, my system's camera. So and for now, I'm only using the camera on my laptop. So yeah, that's just a disclaimer for that. Then we already so back to this, yeah, because I think officially now we can begin. It's time, so we're going to do a review of these. This is the assignment, right, for week one, and then we also have the labs, right? So uh, we're going to jump straight into the so if once we look at this, I mean, okay, let me just formally introduce us or welcome us rather to um welcoming us to Cyber Vigil University's online degree in cybersecurity, our community, or online community, right? And of course, we already know, we already gone through the orientation processes, so we sort of understand what we are expected to deliver right in this course and during this program. So let's look at what we have to do in terms of reviewing this week's material, right? So we are meant to understand the history of information security, right? So and I mean this takes us back into the early days of computers and how they came about, right? And then when we talk about computers, those days, they teach us how to understand what CPU is, what software is, what hardware is, right? And now, interestingly, right, today we see that those knowledge that we gained back then in primary school, secondary school are really very applicable into how we, approach technology these days. I mean, those days when we are being taught central processing unit, things like that, right? And then we just thought, oh, what are we doing? Or, some of us that, but I mean, fast track to today, you can see what we now just right here on my screen. You can see what we used to have as the earlier versions of code machine or computers, as the case may be, right? And I'm sure very I mean, many of us will be familiar with things like this, maybe the typewriter, I mean, but this was actually called the Enigma. I think there's a movie that is actually tailored to us in this, right? I don't know if anyone has seen that movie, you know, right? So there's actually that aspect of the of computer. So we grew a long time, right? And of course, um, just as we grew, it's the same way technology in sense or in the technology as a whole as well grew, right? So we had, you know, um, you know, I mean, if you're familiar with Windows, you know we used to use Windows XP before we started having Windows, um, maybe professional, you know, and then and then with all these things, what I'm trying to say is with all these things, with all these I would say new technologies, right? We have as well new threats. Now, what am I trying to say is, look, even back in the days, right, as far back as this period, right, there were still security issues that were associated with these types of computers, right? There were still security issues that were associated with this kind of computers. And one thing that is important to understand is that computers as a whole, um, from their physical, that's the hardware, up onto the software, those are the things that we can't see, right? They all are susceptible to threats. And that's the thing that is very important. And that's what this chapter would actually introduce you. This is what this chapter we talk to you about. I mean, like I said, it's our duty, that we go and digest these materials. Like I'm going to be here. Other instructors that would come here and attend the live sessions would come and review these pages, these chapters to you. We're not going to read word for word, yeah, but we'll make what you're reading relatable. Will make you understand what you're reading, right? So you can actually go back, read them with understanding. So that's what we are going to do, right? Now you can see, right? You can see the vulnerabilities that were as well associated with the computer systems, right? Right from their processor to the communication lines to the switching center. You can see different things here. You can see how the files themselves, the hardware, software, everything about computing actually needs what is called protection, and then you need security, right? And mind you, I said, computers actually susceptible to what is called physical threat, as well as threats that we can't see. For instance, I would say networking. I mean, you can't see. Can you see you can read an IP address, but you can't actually touch an IP address. Just like, okay, you can touch your mouse, you can touch your keyboard, but can you touch, can you touch a network? Just think about it. Some things you can't see, something. So all these things, as long as they are, they're computerized, right? Once the computer leaves, the hardware state to the software state or the input state, right? We have output, input. So once it leaves the output to input, it's now, entangled with so many vulnerabilities, right? So you can see these graphics. These graphics actually says a lot, right? Some of the things that are vulnerable to network, you can see radiation and tabs, crosswalk, things like this, right? You can see. I mean, this, and that's why this material we share to us, because it's actually something that is a material that's very robust. So I will encourage you, to review each of these chapters, right? Now, another thing that is very important, right? Because you see how we have carried, we've graduated, just from looking at the CPU, the physical aspect. Now we are not talking about security terms, right? Things like confidentiality, integrity, availability. Now these are more or less like the three pillars of a computer, right? Because the computer holds data, and then those data could be confidential, which means you want to keep those data confidential. You also want to make sure that the integrity of those data stays intact, and then availability, simply stating that once you request the data, for instance, you have a calculator. When you press 1 plus 1, you expect the calculator to be sensible and available enough to give you the answer, right? So it's just the same way. Just the same way when you request files from the cloud, when you do certain things with your computing devices, you expect that you get responses from these devices like almost immediately, right? So these are like the core principles of security. Now let's look at what they say. They say security is protection, right? I mean, simply put, and what are we protecting it from? We're protecting from adversaries, those who will do harm intentionally or otherwise. So we could have intentional, you know, um, adversaries. We could have unintentional adversaries, right? So it's actually part of this. So we have unintentional um, threats. We also have intentional threat. Now you can see this graphic illustration, which makes it even more interesting. You can see the pillars, right? And you can see we have computer security, data security, networking security, and you can see what's holding these pillars. What are these pillars standing on? Confidentiality, integrity, availability, and you can see the bedrock of I'll say the what actually gives it or makes it more meaningful, right? At the top, policies, management of information security governance, things like this, right? So these are, very important keynotes. While you read these materials, it's important that you keep, yeah, we keep close watch towards this concept, things like attack, things like control, safeguard, countermeasures. You want to look at exploit, exposure, protection profile, security posture, risks, subject, threat agents, and the like. So all these are, important key concepts, right? I want to believe we're not just, we're not just hearing some of the terms like availability, accuracy, authenticity, confidentiality when it comes to computing, right? So, and part of the um, um, assignment, like I think for this week, is that you should, do a PowerPoint slide. Yeah, am I right? Okay, for 800, it's for you to calculate a window of vulnerability, right? So I mean, you see, we've already looked at, something about computer networks vulnerability. Now, when they say create a windows of vulnerability, I'm not going to be saying, I'm not going to be, divulging the answers straight ahead to you, because it's an assignment for you to do. But you want to look at, okay, what is the vulnerability? What is the windows of vulnerability, right? If you attended one of the classes, or the training we did, or just concluded on CISSP, you would have been able to grasp, that concept. So much. So there's also what is known as security models, right? Security models. One of the security models right here that we can see on this textbook, and what it's telling us, is the CNSS security model, right? And just from looking at this already gives you, first of all, you can see the confidentiality, integrity, and availability right here on this axis, and you can also see storage, processing, and transmission. What does this mean, right? Because of course, data are stored, data are processed, and data are transmitted, right? So that already gives you an understanding on why, these three pillars of CIA, the CIA triad, would, more or less be, I would say, inextricably intertwined, with what now, with this model, or with this, principles of storage, processing, and transmission, right? So that's another thing you want to look at for. You also want to look at, the components of an information system. For instance, you can see the software here. You can also see things. This graphical illustration, that is showing you what a software kind of looks like, or just breaking that down for you. Okay, so yeah, you can also see the hardware, the data, the people, procedures, networks. Like I said, I'm not going to, because this live session is, supposed to be for just 20 minutes or thereabout. But I want you to just, I want you to read these chapters with understanding, which is why I'm, going through, kind of taking everything, towards, in a fast pace, and trying to also explain the concept as we move. So there's also what is known as the SDSC. The SDSC is basically the software development lifecycle, right? And this is a methodology, which is a formal approach or to solving problem that is based on a structured sequence of procedures, right? As the names imply, you can see it's the systems development lifecycle, right? So that means information must be managed like any other major system in an organization, and then we approach this with this life cycle. We approach this with this concept, with this methodology. Look, everything in life follows a methodology, right? So there are seasons, there are times, so for instance, during the time of winter, okay, or during the time of summer, like it is over here, that okay, the sun, the temperature is going to be very high. What you want to do is to prepare or have a method of how proceed or do your things, right? So just the way you have methods, or or procedures or processes in your daily life. It's the same way that we approach this as well in in IT as well. So yeah, so that's it. That's the about that. I can see that I'm still in chapter two. So chapter one rather, right? And then okay, so there's a summary right here. So by the time you have been able to let me accept this person. So by the time you have taken time to study this chapter, this is are the things that you should be able to have understood, right? I think we've looked at it as well. So you need to understand software assurance. You need to take a look at data owners who are responsible, data custodians, things like this, and then we have the review for that chapter. And then chapter two, is the need for security. So I mean, with what we've looked at, right? Why do you think we would need security? Why do you think we would want to? Okay, so we have seen now there's a system development life cycle. There's a method. We've seen the CIA triad. We've seen data owners, data custodians. Now, why do we need security? I mean, I can ask the class, and then I believe we can start talking about this and spend as much time as possible. By the way, can the class hear me? Am I audible enough? Am I audible enough, class? Okay, great, 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 great. Okay, okay. All right, all right. Okay, so yeah, back to what we are doing. So when to ask, what is the need? First of all, we need to look at business needs, right? So you know, every business right now that we do today, I mean, look at Cyber Vigil University. We are not, I mean, we know that we are trying our best, but when you want to talk about, competitors, right, people who are doing very similar things to what we do, you want to see the type of um, technology that they are integrating into their method of delivery of lectures delivery. But I mean, at our basic level, right, you can see that we are trying to integrate tech like Google Meet, all these things, right? So I mean, if we want to look at it from the business perspective, we need to protect some of the informations so that what we want to do can function. What do we want to do? What are the business functions? We want to deliver high quality lectures. We want to bring, we want to integrate concepts, things. We want to make cybersecurity very relatable to every of the students, right? We also want to protect this data and information that we collect and use. Most of us submitted the enrollment form. How disappointed. I'm sorry to use the word, but yeah, it's the truth, it's the real, because we have to be real and practical. How disappointed would you be that you find that enrollment form or your enrollment form outside on the web, like, or you find it somewhere else with your phone number? You'd be sort of disappointed, because you expected due diligence, from cyber video to keep your information confidential, secure, right? So all these things, we think about business first, right? And then we look at how we collect your data, how we use these things, and then what are we doing to enable the safe operations of applications, right? So by the time we start integrating more advanced applications, more advanced technology, of course, these are the things that we'll be putting into consideration, right? How we safeguard this technology assets within our organization. All these things are what we want to look at, right? And then when you look at this term, threats and attacks, this is something that as security professionals, you can not sort of um, do a day without hearing these terms, right? You hear threats, you hear attacks, and just as the names implies, right? This already tells you what I mean. This is something that you want to be aware of, right? You can see from this graphical illustration, you can see the different I mean, okay, well, this shows us the potential hackers and where they can come from, right? So I expect that we go through the slides, and we look at these things. Another thing you want to take notice of is software piracy. Now, I'm sort of going through these things, and if you're paying attention, you see the things that I'm highlighting, because these are the things that I expect that we pay attention to. Even though this week we probably might, like I said, we are getting into the course gradually. So in subsequent weeks we'll have assignments where we have to write, and then this written assignments will require you to come look at this material. Now I'm just going to put a disclaimer. If once you're given a written assignments, you're expected to use these materials that we provided, to write your written assignments, right? To take up knowledge. Plagiarism will be flagged, and of course, it will make you lose marks. But what you want to do is you want to understand things, put them in your own words, right? And I've also said it. I'm not saying you should not use artificial intelligence, but I'm going to say leverage on it, right? Don't rely on it, leverage on it, yeah. And then also, if you're taking any sources or you're reading any material outside what we given to you, make sure you properly cite them. In-text citations and references must be included in your work. Now, one cannot exist without the other. You cannot put references without putting text citation. The same way you can't put in-text citations without putting references. So they must both exist. So, and that's what we want to see in your written assignment. We want to see in-text citations. We want to see your references as well. So let me see. Okay, so yeah, that's just what you're going to want to look out for that. Then I think, yeah, chapter 3 finally talks about the legal, the ethical, and professional issues in information security, right? So yeah, now we are looking at the law and ethics of, law and ethics in information security, right? And then this is where we talk about things like the organizational liability and the need for counsel. We want to look at due care, due diligence, jurisdiction, liability, long-arm jurisdiction, restitution. All these are terms that are actually familiar when we talk about, laws and policies. Mind you, this is the um, principles. This is 800. So just right about after this class, we'll be having the next class, which is for 803, right? Security policies and implementation issues as well. So you want to come and take a look at these materials. I think I've been able to, do a little bit of justice in, breaking down some of the concepts, so that while you read them with understanding. Like I said again, we're going to be having written assignments that will require you to come and, fetch, credible information from these materials. And what you want to do is you want to be sure that you're doing the right thing, you're copying the right information, you're reading, and you're reading with understanding, right? And so at this point, I'm just going to take a bit. I'll take time for questions, and then we just take like 5-10 minutes break, and immediately the link to the next class, which is the 803, will be shared to us, and then we'll start the class immediately. So, any questions? Let me take questions now. Questions, questions. So, ask me your questions now. Uh, So again, this is your deliverables. I believe some of us started, making the submissions, which are excellent, very good. I must commend that. I think some of us have started with very good spirit, intensity. I love to see more of that, honestly, and looking forward to reading more of our works. This is the labs as well. The links I already sent, Cyber Million, where you have to take where you have to register and then take this lab, the secure fundamentals, and then what you should focus on is the secure fundamentals, defense in depth, and authentication, right? And then we have the 803, which will be coming next, and there we'll be reviewing chapter 1, 4, and 6 of the textbook. I already also made the textbook available, so you're just shortly before that. Like I said, I will take questions for the next 2-3 minutes before we start the next class. So, any questions, anyone? We're not going to be using the same link. I'll send the link for 803 to the class, so everyone in the class will have the link and they can join the class from there. So the idea is that we finish this before in within 1 hour. So then also, oh, thank you. So your phrase word. Now I'm going to be sending a Google form. immediately after the class. It's important, although this is recorded, so you can still listen to it to memorize the phrase word. But your phrase word, your code phrase word, on the Google Forms, you would have to cite the code phrase word and just a summary of everything I've discussed, or that this session has we've discussed. Yeah, this is just to show that you were in class and then you listened up to this point, or for those who will listen later, that they listened and they paid attention. I mean, they follow through the class. So okay, so your phrase word for 803 is deterrence. This is your phrase word. I marked it in red. Your phrase word is deterrence. This is your code phrase word. Deterrence. 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 That's your code phrase word. Okay, so if there are no questions, then let's take 5 minutes break, and then the link to 803 will be sent to the class. I would encourage everyone again to join, and then we have the class, and then we call it a day. So for now, let's go on a break. Thank you.